Today we will be discussing someone who was involved in one of the most notorious cases of filicide and attempted filicide of the 1980s. Today we will be covering DIANE Downs. What reignited my interest in this case was finding a 1988 interview conducted by Oprah Winfrey with DIANE Downs and crime writer Ann Roll, who wrote a book about the case titled Small Sacrifices, which later became a made-for-TV movie starring Farrah, Fawcett, and Ryan O'Neal. I'll link this below and also the interview so you can see for yourself why Diane Downs was such a vile woman. Elizabeth Diane Frederickson Downs was born in Phoenix, Arizona on August 7, 1955, to parents Wesley Linden and Willa Dean Frederickson. Diane was not fond of her father's lectures, strict rules, and the power he had over her mother. He spent way too much time with my mom, and my mom spent no time with me. During her trial, Diane testified that her father sexually assaulted her when she was 12, and that at 13 she tried to slit her wrists. She briefly attended Pacific Coast Bible College in Orange, California, but was forced to leave after 1 year for promiscuous behavior. At 18, Diane married a man named Steve Downs. She claimed she didn't marry for love, but as a means to escape her family. Shortly after this, she gave birth to her first child, a daughter named Christy, who Diane claimed was her first good friend. She had a second daughter named Cheryl, who she called a colicky child. Her third pregnancy ended as she had an abortion. She later saw an anti-abortion booth at a local fair, you know the kind, where they had the graphic images all over the place. Well, apparently seeing this made her regret the choice she made. She stated, "I felt the need to do something to make amends for what I had done wrong. When I had the abortion, I was led to believe that a 6-week fetus is nothing more than mucus." She then testified that her husband had a vasectomy, so in order to become pregnant for the 4th time, she sought out a friend by the name of Mark Sager. He fathered her son Danny. After the birth of Danny, and in reference to the abortion she had, she stated, "I found out that you cannot replace a child that you have killed," which to me as a mother sounds like she fully believed that children, like objects, could be replaced. She divorced her husband in 1980, who she claimed was abusive, although she was the one who had a history of being unfaithful during their entire marriage, a point which she loudly and proudly admits. Post-divorce, she became a surrogate mother, which I will agree is one of the kindest gifts one human can give to another, although this spark of goodness cannot erase the bad that followed. By the time the surrogate baby was born around 1983, Diane had become involved with a coworker at the post office, a man by the name of Robert Knickerbocker, who she called Nick, her very married coworker. She claimed that she felt more comfortable with Nick than she had with any other man in her life. Although their relationship was on and off, in April of 1983, Diane decided to move up to Oregon, where her father was postmaster. She wrote in her diary that, "I have more advantages than most people because my dad's name pulls power." Diane hoped this move would prompt Nick to leave his wife Charlene and join her in Oregon. That spring, Diane began to write Nick letters but not send them. She kept them in her diary. These letters were used by the prosecution to show that Diane was obsessed with this relationship. This was a huge problem because Nick had been very clear with Diane that he had zero desire to be a father to children of his own, let alone stepchildren. A few examples of these letters are as follows. April 21st, 1983. "I still think of you as my best friend and lover, and you keep telling me to go away and find someone else." April 29th. "It doesn't matter what Charlene says. I'm a little sad that she has convinced you that the kids would be a burden, because I know it would not be true." May 11th. "I have 3 beautiful children that I love more than anyone else. I think I love them even more than you now. Danny says he's my best buddy and I'm his best buddy. He always gives me kisses and hugs every morning when I go to work. He waves and says, 'Bye, Mom, pick me up after work. I love you.'" Diane scoffed at the idea these letters held any weight. She said of them that they were just a lot of mush, something you write to a man. She also said that the reason those kids surfaced in those letters was purely by accident. "I was losing interest in Nick. He was becoming too time-consuming, even for letter writing." Diane boldly told the jury, "Let's put it this way, if I loved him as much as I said in those letters, wouldn't I have sent them?" Her diary ends on May 17th, 1983, 2 days before the shooting took place. Now for the crime. On May 19th, 1983, Diane Downs took her 3 children for a drive down a rural road in Oregon while blasting the new song "Hungry Like the Wolf" by Duran Duran. She claimed a messy-haired man had carjacked her and shot her children at point-blank range, and shot her in the forearm. Then Diane got away from the man and drove to the hospital to save her children and herself. Well, that's what she would like for you to believe anyway. An eyewitness who happened to be driving behind her claimed she was driving a mere 5 to 7 miles an hour on her way to the hospital. Upon arrival, Cheryl, who was 7, and her middle child, was declared dead on arrival. Her other 2 children were admitted for treatment with life-threatening injuries. Christy had a stroke and was near death. They were thankfully able to stabilize her, and although the stroke made it impossible for her to speak for a period of time, by the time the trial rolled around, she was able to testify against her mother. Danny, who was only 3, was paralyzed from the waist down and never regained the ability to walk. Diane was shot in the left arm, which was a minor injury according to hospital staff. Although this case was a tragedy, the prosecutor Fred Hughey and his wife Joanne permanently adopted Christy and Danny, the children who managed to survive, and raised them as their own. Now for a plot twist. As Diane Downs was preparing for trial right before she was arrested, she purposely became pregnant. This pregnancy was a shock to the public, as Diane was on trial for killing one of her children and attempting to kill the other 2. She refused to name the father of the child. She gave birth to another daughter between the verdict and the sentencing. This baby she named Amy Elizabeth. Thankfully, she was adopted by another family and renamed Becky Babcock. Diane and her 3 children came into the emergency room. John Mackey, the doctor in charge that evening, testified. What came in that night was an emergency physician's nightmare. Hospital staff and police officers also testified that Diane's demeanor that night was unusually controlled under the circumstances. Dr. John Mackey also testified that what I observed was a woman who was very calm, very self-assured, not tearful, not angry, occasionally smiling, occasionally chuckling. I saw a woman who appeared to be in very good control of herself. Willadine Fredrickson, Diane's mother, had a very different account of how Diane was behaving that evening. Willadine testified as she wept on the stand that her daughter was hysterical. She was crying when I walked in. She said, "Mom, I can't live without my kids." And I said, "Don't worry, they'll be okay." Diane's own behavior at the hospital would be what prompted the investigators to suspect her. Nick also testified for the prosecution that on the night Diane was leaving Arizona to move back to Oregon, he spotted a .22 pistol in the trunk of her car. The bullet casings found at the site of the shooting and cartridges found in her apartment were found to have been worked through the same gun. Diane gave a variety of accounts of how the shooting happened in the days after the incident. One scenario was that the shootings were committed by 2 men in ski masks who knew her by name and also knew she had a 5-inch rose tattoo on her back. Later in a phone call with Nick, which he secretly recorded, Diane stated that she believed her ex-husband had found a hitman to carry out the shootings. Her ex-husband testified that he believed that Diane was the shooter. Diane's defense attorney stated that these various accounts of what happened were due to dreams, because Diane couldn't distinguish between reality and nightmares. Diane was found guilty on all charges and was sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years. This should be the end of the story, but no, it is not. In 1987, Diane Downs managed to escape from the women's prison in Oregon, where she was being held. She was tracked down a mere 2 weeks later, shacked up with the husband of an inmate she had met at the prison. She is currently incarcerated at a high-security prison in California and was denied parole in 2008 and 2010. After this stunt, she was told she would have to wait another decade before she could apply for parole. That would mean as of 2020, she is able to apply yet again. She has never admitted her guilt or explained what motivated her to take lethal action against her own children. She, to this day, is an example that some people shouldn't have children because they put their own selfish needs above the needs of the children. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.